Thank you very much for joining me, Ambassador Gilon, on Times Now. 28 days thereabouts of the offensive launched by Israel. Ground actions have also been going on for a while now. How close are you to your ultimate objective of obliterating the Hamas?
So the cabinet gave the military two main objectives. One of them is obliterating Hamas, as you said. The other one is retrieving the kidnapped. So we have 240 kidnapped. You can see the pictures around us, and I don't think that we are there. It's going to be a long job. It's very hard, especially when you have Hamas hiding underground and having their population as human shields above them.
You've also lost 25 soldiers. There is a price that every war pays. How do you look at this entire situation when you say it's going to be long drawn?
We lost only now 25 soldiers, but we lost many more on the initial attack. So the numbers of soldiers and civilians, of course, 1,400 just on the 7th of October. The price is there, but we understand one thing. You know, in Israel, we don't have a professional army, hardly. It's conscription. Everyone goes to the military service. So our children, myself, my father, my children, everyone is in military service. And we don't see here an element of a price. We understand that this is part of our living and having to exist in a very tough neighborhood. And in this sense, we do what we need to do to survive, because if Israel does not eliminate Hamas, which is a jihadist, I always say that we went to sleep on October 6th with Hamas as our neighbor, and we woke up on October 7th after the attack with ISIS as a neighbor. And such organizations, the only way to deal with them, since the ideology is so strong and so embedded in them, it's either to capture them or kill them, or let them go, but not stay there. So this is going to be long. It's very hard. We have to get to the leadership. We have to go, and whatever the price is, because if we don't do that, we lose our ability to live in the region, because they will continue to attack us. We will be perceived as weak. Others will continue to attack us. It will be a terrible time for Israel if we are unable to eliminate them.
So let me ask you, Ambassador Gilon, Israel has gone to war with the Hamas in the past as well. Is the obliteration of Hamas really an achievable objective? Because they'll find recruits all the time and keep coming back to create trouble in the region. And you've managed to kill many of the Hamas leaders. But can you really look at this as a realistic target of obliterating the Hamas?
You know, it's not the same as the previous skirmishes we had with Hamas, because we had them with Hamas and not with ISIS. We always believed, and I think that the biggest misconception of Israel was that we thought that Hamas are, you know, they are pragmatic in the way that they think of their population, the well-being. So we had the dual containment with Hamas. The one is the military deterrence, and the second was our attempts to improve their level of living. We had tens of thousands coming to work in Israel every day, and it's a lot of income. We had a lot of merchandise coming in, and we thought that by doing this, we give Hamas a good reason not to mess with us. But we were wrong. We were wrong, and now that we understand that it's a very ideological ISIS, Islamic Jihad kind of organization, there is no choice left to us. So we cannot now reach a ceasefire as we did in the past and say, okay, now we have a ceasefire and they are deterred for another time. No, this level of attack is a watershed change for Israel. And that's why we put a very ambitious target. And the target is, again, achieving the target is you will not take out the supporters of Hamas who are not fighters. They will stay there, but they will lose the leadership, they will lose the organizational capacity, and they will lose the weapons. This is what we aim to do, and that's why it's going to be long, because they are underground. It's not an open field war, and we have citizens involved, and we have to be civilians, and we have to be very cautious about that. So it's a very, very sensitive situation, but we have to prevail. We have no alternative. This is the existence of Israel.
You say that civilians are involved. Many people look at this entire war as a disproportionate action by Israel, simply because 10,000 people have died on the other side, 3,000 of them being children. And it's called the graveyard of babies and children over there. Whereas there are 1,400 fatalities on your side. Is it disproportionate? Are those numbers really telling you the correct story?
Yeah, first of all, there is a huge difference. Numbers are not relevant here, because the difference that we have here is that a terror organization, came and penetrated Israel, 30 Jewish communities, and started slaughtering people in their beds, cutting, decapitating, raping, killing babies, burning families, children in front of the parents, parents in front of their children. It's one thing. You cannot compare it to the reaction of a democracy that is coming there in order to try and eliminate the risk. So the proportionality is wrong, this thinking that you have to equate numbers. Numbers are not relevant here. We have to be proportional to the threat that they are posing to Israel. This is where we have to be proportional. And one has to understand that the threat is the destruction of Israel. That's what they call the leaders. It's not my invention. They say that. We are here to eliminate the Jews, kill the Jews, by the way, destruct Israel, and also in their covenant they speak about killing Jews around the world, not only in our region. So the threat is very huge. Comparing of numbers is not relevant, although I wouldn't trust all their numbers, but we know what happened with the hospital, that they claimed that Israel is the one that attacked, and after 5 minutes from the attack, they already had a body count of 471 people, not 470 and not 472. So even the numbers, but I'm not putting that even on the table. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't see any numbers of the terrorists that we are killing. So as if all the people are civilians. I didn't see any, they didn't declare that Israel killed 2,000, 3,000 terrorists. So the number is not given by them. Anyhow, it's not about punishment. It's about making sure that this threat is eliminated. And I think it's also for the best. It's not only about Israel. This is going to serve, if there will be the perception that the jihadists are winning, especially against Israel, which is considered probably the strongest military in the region, it will give backwind to, you spoke about the fact that you cannot eliminate terrorists. That's what Americans and the forces, Allied forces did in Iraq and Syria, and where they fought. They were able to kill a lot of the leadership. They were able to disperse them. Many came back to their own countries, and it can be in Europe, it can be in our region, it can be in South Asia. So people came back to Maldives and to Bangladesh and to Kerala and to different places. And the fear is that if there will be a perception of victory, of momentum, of power, the ideology that is embedded in them will come out, and we'll see atrocities again in different places, like we saw the attacks in Europe, in Paris, Bataclan, all that stuff around the world. The fear is that it will reappear. So there is a need to have a decisive victory over them. I think many in the world, many leaders in the world understand that.
But 3,000 children?
Again, we are doing the utmost not to hit children. We waited with the ground assault almost 3 weeks from the attack. And all the time we called the people, please, we knew that we are going to the northern part of Gaza first. The main effort would be there. So we asked them with leaflets, with phones, with any way we could, media, please go to the south, evacuate your homes, go to the south. We don't want to go in a ground offensive when you have civilian population there. What did Hamas do? Hamas went and threatened them and shot them and made roadblocks. We have pictures of that in order to prevent them of going south. And we are still asking them to go south. And Hamas is still preventing them from going south. Even when we open a safe corridor for traveling south, Hamas tries to attack this corridor. So they don't care about their population. It's an old trick of Hamas. You attack Israel, you know you cannot have a fair fight with Israel on the ground, so you go underground, you shoot from behind civilian population in order for Israel to hit civilians, your civilians, in order for you to have the support of the world to stop the fire, because you don't really want to fight with Israel. So you sting Israel. This time it was not a sting, it was a huge bite. And you go back and say, we are the victims now. We are the ones who have to be protected. No, this is not the situation. The situation is that they are using their own population. We are the ones who are trying to prevent the population from being hit. I don't know the numbers, if they are accurate or non-accurate. I wouldn't buy on their accounts of Hamas, but yet still we are doing the utmost not to have civilian casualties. Of course, not children and not adults and not any.
Let me ask you, is Israel under pressure for a ceasefire? Because there are narratives that are being built across the world. Some will paint you as the perpetrators of the tough option of war. Others, of course, will talk and support you in the retribution, in the finishing off of Hamas. So far, Israel has maintained no ceasefire possible. But do you think the pressure is growing?
I think that there is pressure, and as I said before, it's because people are trying to protect Hamas. People are trying. Ceasefire clearly will help Hamas. There is no problem. I mean, humanitarian aid is coming in with or without a ceasefire. This is not going to change. We enabled foreign nationalities that wanted to go out towards Egypt. We enabled that. Everything is done under fire. We know how to conduct ourselves in a way. So humanitarian is not needed there. The only humanitarian that we care about now, and has to be the main thing for us, are their families. Their families are telling the government, no ceasefire, no humanitarian, no nothing done, humanitarian ceasefire until they are back. So the 240 kidnapped, they need to be back. Their humanitarian situation is the worry for us, and there is pressure from outside, maybe some countries that are trying to help Hamas regroup and rearm or whatever, or run away, or whatever they want. But there is also pressure from the inside of the families of saying, you know, the humanitarian crisis is of ourselves and our family members there. So I hope that we are able to withhold the pressure and continue with the humanitarian relief efforts that we are doing together with the Americans, together with others, and again, not go into a ceasefire, long ceasefire that will help Hamas. If they are released, the 240, it's a different condition. It's a different situation we can discuss. But first they have to be released, and then we can go and think of other ways.
What about the airstrikes from Lebanon, from Hezbollah? Do you see this developing into a two-front war?
I don't know. It's quite clear. If you look at the region, you understand the Iranian connection, because there are four, if Iran is the octopus head, there are four military arms that are armed, trained, and financed by Iran. It's Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is part of the Shiites who are part of the flesh. I mean, Nasrallah, the leader, spoke about Hezbollah as a wing of the Revolutionary Guards, or himself as a soldier in the Revolutionary Guards. So you see the Iranians there. They have the Houthis in Yemen, who are also Shiites, and also the same idea, more or less. You have Hamas, Sunnis, but still armed, trained, and financed by Iran, and you have the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. And all of them are trying to engage Israel. And you see also the Iranians very active, not only vocally speaking, also coming in the second week or the first week after the attack on Israel. Immediately the Iranian foreign minister came and met all the heads of the terror organizations. You saw that in other places when they're speaking, threatening. If we will have, we hope not to have a second front, not now. If we will have to deal with two fronts, we will deal with two fronts. But we are doing the utmost. We are in de facto proxy war with Iran. Iran is fighting Israel, not directly, but all the 30-something objects that flew from the Houthis, from Yemen, towards Israel were Iranian, be it surface-to-surface missiles, UAVs, and cruise missiles. All were Iranian made, so we shouldn't be mistaking here. Iran is having a proxy war with Israel, and we will cut the head, we will cut the arms, and if it comes to it that Iran attacks Israel, we will go for the head. So for the time being, we hope to do Hamas, and that's it. We are not looking for more trouble. But if we will be challenged, we'll raise to the challenge.
And this is a warning that Israel would always give Iran.
We are not looking for fight with anyone. Not with Iran, not with Hezbollah, not with anyone. Anyone that picks a fight with us has to take into consideration that we will retaliate, and very strongly. We have the abilities to retaliate to all. So this is in general a warning to anyone in the region, instigated by Iran or the Iranians themselves who are thinking of doing war with Israel. Beware. We know how to protect ourselves.
Ambassador Gilon, what do you know about the safety of the hostages who've been taken? Because 2 Israeli hostages were released earlier, 2 American. But then we also know what they did to Shani Lok, the German-Israeli woman. What do you know really about the safety? And is there any conversation with any other country in the region to try and mediate and get the hostages released?
We unfortunately don't know, because I don't want to say another war crime, but yeah, they even don't let the Red Cross visit the people to see how they are, where they are, what conditions they are. No, it's a huge concern for us what's happening with them. We don't know how they are treated. There were 5 that were released, 2 and 2, and we released by force another young lady, young soldier. All those who were released were in okay condition. It was in relatively early stages, but time is passing. They are from the age of the youngest was 9 months. Today he's 10 months old, by the way, the youngest there. And there are a few that are in that age or a little bit older, and until 85 years old. So there are many people with medicines that they need, with many, many needs, and we don't know how they are. We have no idea whatsoever. And this is part of the humanitarian suffering of the families, not knowing that we don't know also who's alive, who arrived dead, who arrived alive. We know who's missing, whose body we couldn't find, and there are still bodies, by the way, not identified. So every day the number goes up or down, because if we identify a body or we didn't identify a body, it can change our estimation of how many people are kidnapped. So Red Cross has to be there. We are, of course, as you know, the Qataris are there. And again, one has to understand, why do the Qataris have influence over Hamas? Because they were helping them all the years, and they were financing them. So it's doesn't come from a good place. But now the Qataris, together with the Americans, are making big efforts on releasing the hostages. I hope it will happen, and you know, we only pray for them. That's what we have to do.
Do you think Saudi Arabia and UAE will stay with Israel? Your conversations were going very well, or do you think they will back off for now? How do you estimate these relations to progress?
I can hope. I can hope. I believe that in general they understand, the leaderships understand that this Muslim Brotherhood jihadist way of threat, they know that, not only understand, it's a threat to them also. And it's not by coincidence that Iran is a threat to them, and they see Iran as a threat. And the Houthis are a threat to the Saudis, and they know that because they had wars, and still last week they killed another few soldiers. So the interests that made us together are even becoming stronger, not weaker. I think that one of the reasons that the extremists in the region instigated this attack is that they saw that in the last 3 years the Middle East, or West Asia, was changing for the better. We had the Abraham Accords 3 years ago, and it's UAE and Bahrain that established relations with Israel. Morocco joined later on. And then we had Saudi Arabia in the last few months in very strong negotiations towards establishment of some kind of an agreement with Israel. We had economic deals going eye to eye to the India, Israel, UAE, US economic development programs. We had the IMEC, what India launched with some partners in the G20, of having a corridor, naval and train, from India through UAE, Gulf, Jordan, Israel to the Mediterranean. And I think that the extremist Iran and the other extremists saw these projects and wanted to stop it because they don't want the region to develop positively, to have cooperation. They prefer people to be miserable and extreme. And this is a big fight of also ideology here.
Let me ask you, a week ago, India abstained from a Jordan-sponsored resolution that called for a ceasefire in Gaza, and that's because the resolution did not mention the terror attack by the Hamas. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been engaging with Prime Minister Netanyahu as well. Despite that, there is a two-nation solution that is sought for. Do you think both these are possible to coexist and a resolution can be found on both issues?
So I think that they're totally separated. The issue of counterterrorism, where India was very outspoken and strong about, is one element. But this is not a problem between Israel and the Palestinians. It's a problem between Israel and Hamas and a jihadist ISIS-like organization. So this has to be dealt as counterterrorism. It's not connected to our issues with the Palestinians. And many countries, India included, made this separation between countering Hamas, countering terrorism in a very strong way, they support, and at the same time calling for humanitarian aid for the population who are suffering because they are caught there. And speaking of the two-state solution, by the way, getting rid of Hamas can only help the processes in the region. Why? Because today, from 2005 that Israel left Gaza, Hamas, or from 2006 when Hamas won the elections there, a year later, Hamas is in control of Gaza. And they threw out, in 2007, they threw out the Palestinian Authority by force, by throwing them off rooftops and really killing many of them. So Hamas is there, and the Palestinian Authority is in Judea and Samaria. There are two different, so when you speak about two-state solution, these are two Palestinian entities that are opposed to each other and competing and hate each other. So eliminating Hamas should strengthen the Palestinian Authority if they're smart enough to join also the rebuild of Gaza and whatever happens after we eliminate them.
So let me ask you, recently Israel suspended a minister who also, when asked if a nuclear attack on the Gaza Strip was one option, he said that's one way. Are you saying that Israel is not going the nuclear way and not looking at that as an option, which is why such a step was taken?
It was a very unfortunate statement by that minister, and I think the Prime Minister said it loud and clear minutes after it happened, said that it's totally unacceptable, not Israeli policy, and also suspended him, as you said, from the government. It's not part of the game here. We are not here to do anything but eliminate. We are trying in a surgical way as much as we can to eliminate Hamas. We are not against the Palestinian people. We are not against the civilian population of Gaza. And that's why we are trying, and we pay a price with Israeli soldiers. I mean, carpet bombing is much easier, but we are not doing it because we are trying to go in. I mean, the fact that, for example, the headquarters of Hamas, in the tunnels of the headquarters, are under the Shifa hospital and under other hospitals too, different headquarters. We know, and okay, the easy thing is go take a very heavy bomb blaster, a deep blaster bomb, and get rid of all the tunnels and everything under it. We are not doing it because we are not like that. Sooner or later we'll have to go down also to these tunnels if the leaders are there, but we'll have to find a way of doing it without minimum harm to civilian bystanders and population who are the human shields there.
So let me ask you, Hamas and Iran had a meeting this weekend. Iranian state media confirmed a meeting between Khamenei and Hamas's Haniyeh in Tehran. Do you think this will worsen the situation, which is very precariously poised?
It cannot help the situation. And again, the situation is bad. I think that the Iranians are under tremendous pressure because they understand that their huge investment in Hamas for years is going to go down the drain, because once we finish Hamas, they will lose one of the 4 military arms that they established in our region. And I think that this is one of the reasons that they are also hesitant about Hezbollah, because they understand that, again, it will be very costly to Israel if Hezbollah joins the war. But at the end of this, Hezbollah will be much, much weaker, and Lebanon will be much more suffering than before the war. So I guess that, it doesn't make a change or a difference. Here, Iran is trying to save Hamas, but we are determined to get rid of them.
So let me ask you, there is also, apart from a military war, a military offensive, in the current environment of the world with social media, there is a war of narratives. There is one side which looks at this as a counter-terrorism operation. There is another which looks at this as an anti-humanitarian operation and are called terror appeasers by many. I want to ask you, across the world, many leaders, including Indian politicians, including Priyanka Gandhi, have come out and said what's happening in Gaza is shameful. How do you look at some of these comments that come up?
I will say my honest opinion about it in a very simple way. I also wrote on Twitter that the thumb rule for me, people who came out on October 7th and condemned this murderous, vicious, animal-like, worse attack on Israel and the dead and everything, without trying to put it in any context or to explain the suffering, because I don't think that there is any context for killing children, raping women, beheading people. There is no context for this. It's wrong, and human beings have to condemn it. Those who went on October 7, October 8 and condemned it in a very clear way, they bought a moral chair by the table. And they can come now into Israel and say, don't do that, don't do this, the Palestinians. But I suggest to scroll down in the feeds of all the people who are now criticizing Israel and see whether they bothered to criticize on October 7th. Most of them haven't. This is exactly the game. What happened here is that the world, the Palestinian supporters, who are the majority in the world in general, and countries, just look at more than 50 Muslim countries in the world, and so that in numbers they are bigger in the world, and there are many uninformed, I think that there are uninformed liberals in the world, that uninformed in the sense that they don't understand that the liberal player in the story is Israel, the place where you have gays who can have a normal life, and you can, it's a liberal country by definition. In Hamas, they kill for example, homosexuals. LGBTs do not exist there. They escape to Israel in order to survive. So there is a misinformation also of that. But the majority in the world probably is automatically going with the Palestinians, seeing them as the weak player. Now, after that, this vicious attack, people felt uncomfortable to support Israel or, to go against Israel, let's say. And that's why the hospital misinformation event, claiming that Israel hit the hospital, immediately gave the excuse for the people to go back to where they feel comfortable. Where do they feel comfortable? Against Israel. So we are back to square one. People who were with Israel before that and against terrorism are with us. People who just needed an excuse found a wrong excuse, but they are back also to their. So we are in the world exactly in the same place. Look, most of the democratic countries in the world, the strongest democracies in the world, the European Union, US, Japan, Australia, Canada, these countries came in support of Israel in fighting Hamas, and very early stages also. And now they want us to do this or that on humanitarian. It's okay, it's a fair thing. You thought about our civilians and saw them as humans and not as oppressors. A baby of 9 months old is an oppressor who was murdered because he deserved it. More or less, this is the perception. So, all those who were silent around October 7, they have no right of speaking of human rights, because it's clear that they don't mind human rights. They mind the Palestinian human rights. Israeli human rights don't count. And I don't see them as legitimate, and they have no influence over me because I don't count them. They are not relevant for me. The people who understand the suffering of Israel and everything, they are the people who I count and are relevant. Prime Minister Modi ji, 7th October, I think 4:30 afternoon, India time, already came out when the full extent was not clear. He certainly, India, through him, gained the place on the moral table to speak to us on other elements on how we make it easier for the population.
What about the opposition leaders here?
I don't know. Go down, scroll down their feeds and look if they condemned or didn't condemn. Those who condemned, okay.
Is that appeasement? How do you see it?
I think it's, you know, for sure it's the justification of terrorism, because if you are trying to give a context, explain the logic of you don't go to a serial murder and try to explain that his father was abusive to him, so it was justified to kill people. No, he's a serial murderer and he kills people. If you think that there is a problem with how the father treated, it's another different issue. But when you see the atrocities, you have to go against atrocities. This is what it means to be a decent human being. And this is what I expect of people. Be decent. You can complain of Israel. First of all, deplore. Then the day, not in the same time, day later, 2 days later, come and say, look, I have an issue. I deplored, I am against it, but I think that you're doing this or you're doing that. This is, I think, basic decency that not all people show.
Let me in the end ask you, you also wrote to a very large Indian newspaper objecting to an interview they had carried. Where were you coming from?
Okay, they interviewed Abu Marzouk, one of the leaders of Hamas, when Khaled Mashal, also in Kerala, was appearing a couple of days before that in a video conference, by the way, calling for, what was Khaled Mashal calling for? For prepare for jihad in Israel, but prepare for jihad is not a good thing. He was telling people, go out, the Indians, the audience, go down out to the streets and the squares and demonstrate for Palestinians or for Hamas, give money for the resistance. This is utterly, I mean, Hamas is recognized as a terror organization in about 40 countries in the world. And in India, not yet. I hope the process will start, because if it will be recognized, such murders, mass murders, arch terrorists will not be able to come here, incite the population, ask for funding, terror funding, which India, of course, is against. And I think this is outrageous to give these mass murderers a stage to speak and explain the logic behind why they massacred people in their homes on the Jewish holiday, in their beds, full families, and kidnapped them and everything. I think this is where I felt very, very, again, it's decent, basic decency. You don't want to give, you know, if any country would have done that with Lashkar Taiba after the Mumbai attacks, I think India would be very, very, very unhappy to give them the stage to explain the logic and why they did it and what is their problems. No, they shouldn't speak about anything. These are mass murders. They are not representing the Palestinian people. They are jihadists and have to be eliminated.
Well, Ambassador Gilon, impassioned as you are, these are troubled times, and we do hope all these hostages who've been caught over the last 30 days do return home safely. Our prayers go out to them. We live in troubled times, but we do hope better sense prevails and peace returns, because nothing in the world is worth taking lives of civilians, especially children and babies. We do hope that better sense prevails, and I would like to wish you and your country all the very best, and our heart goes out to all those hostages held there, and we do hope we'll see an end to this war sooner than later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.